My name is Kathleen Shevlin, and I am here today to talk about the Senior Impact Project, which is a program sponsored by Society for the Blind in Sacramento. And for those of you who are not familiar with Society for the Blind, the agency has been in Sacramento for over 65 years. It began as a grassroots meeting place for people who are blind in a basement of a church, and it's now grown into a full-service rehabilitation center for people who are blind or low vision, visually impaired. We focus on teaching, so we have programs for different age groups, and the senior program is for people 55 and older. As a vendor for the California State Department of Rehabilitation, we also operate like a school. It's a vocational program. So usually they're younger folks that come through that program. They are clients of the Department of Rehabilitation Blind Field Services, and they may, be coming to classes for 9 months to a year, sometimes more, depending on what their goals are. And then we also work with the school system, so we do have folks who have very young children who are, I believe it's IEPs, and so they're trying to prepare their children for special ed and programs, and how do they best support. Our low vision clinic does exams for all these different programs and ages, and most of their clients or patients would be people who are referred by their ophthalmologist, retinologist, a medical doctor. They need to see medical records before they do the exam. The exam's pretty extensive, and what they're really looking for, and this is layman's terms, is functional vision. Somebody who has an eye condition and vision loss may still have enough functional vision for magnification, which could be anything from glasses to whole realm of new products that have come out in the last, decade or so, and just continue to be pretty phenomenal. So once somebody goes through those programs, goes through the low vision clinic, oftentimes we get referrals to our senior program. Some of their patients go on to Department of Rehab, to a vocational track. Then kind of in conjunction with the low vision clinic, but also just open to the general public, is North State Assistive Technology, which is a store within our agency that provides all kinds of low vision, non-visual aids. So, you're talking watches, clocks, large print. So this is a very popular calendar. So there's all kinds of things that are in large print. There's a lot of devices, appliances, games, tools that are just everyday tools that we may have in our homes, but become more difficult to use when you can't see them. So oftentimes those devices can be audio, and that can make a difference for folks. When you can't depend on your vision, you start depending on your sense of touch and hearing, and I'll call that adapting to a new way of life. And so tools can be really important for folks. That kind of gives you kind of a broad range of what we're doing. The senior program has been around since 1998, something like that, and evolved into the program it is now, in which we are focusing, as I said, on people 55 and older. But they can also be folks who maybe are in the early stages of a diagnosis and, well, I'm not blind. What do I need these services for? Oftentimes, they don't know about us. They don't get referred to us until later. But also people who, in the early stages, oftentimes find sometimes if they started earlier, we'll get remarks back, oh, I wish I had started earlier. So we encourage people, if you've gotten a diagnosis and you're fearful and you're concerned, this is education, and education empowers. It doesn't hurt you. The more you know, the more you are able to cope with adversity. We in the senior program are funded by a grant from the California State Department of Rehabilitation. And that funding is from American Disabilities Act. It specifies it's for older individuals with blindness, and the Department of Rehabilitation disperses this money all over California to different regional centers and nonprofits that provide the services, which are education, training, resources, and support. We don't charge anything for our services. We have several other grants and philanthropy that help to fund the program, but we, through the Department of Rehabilitation, receive, our service region. So our service region is 14 counties. So I go to Mendocino, and I go over to Mono County and Sierra County, Chico, Amador, Calaveras. So it's a pretty, besides the metropolitan area, we have quite a large region to reach out to. And a good portion of that is fairly rural. So that makes it very challenging for folks to get in contact with us or to know about us. The services that we offer through the senior program are right now primarily in-home visits. That means instructors can come to people's homes in any one of those 14 counties, sit down with them, talk to them specifically, not so much about, their vision problem, their eye condition, because they're not medical. It's what are the challenges and the barriers to doing the things you need to do to be independent, the things that you enjoy doing, you want to do, that makes your life rich and full. And one of the key successes in our program, and this has been this way for decades now, all of our instructors, no matter whether it's a senior program or, the core program for the vocational track, the instructors are themselves visually impaired. And I would say the majority of them weren't born visually impaired or blind. It happened later in life. They themselves had to adapt, retrain, become familiar with resources. So it's not just a profession, it's personal for them. And that makes a big impact on our clients who, with the diagnosis or the experience of losing vision, it's pretty traumatic. The stages of grief that you go through when you have any kind of significant physical health impact. So having someone come who's going to teach you, they've got a story too. And we all want to hear stories and share stories, but we don't want to stay stuck on our stories. And so they're modeling the skills and the strategies they're teaching, the tools. And in general, they're a pretty nice bunch of people, that will come to visit you in your home. And I always tell people, they do everything. As far as they keep their own schedules, they have to write reports, so they're technology, computer-based. They've got to go into databases, write reports, enter data. All of this, expectation of somebody who's working in a profession. And the only thing I know that most of them can't do is drive. So they all have drivers, and they're coordinating their appointments and their drivers as well. So they really are professionals. So in addition to the in-homes, right now we started, because of the pandemic in April of 2020, reaching out to people remotely. Well, senior population, we're not Zooming with them primarily. We do have some that do, but our primary way of reaching out has been by telephone. So a teleconference platform. And for over 2 years now, we've been offering meetings, support group meetings by telephone on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 10:30. People call in, and people that need to be assisted and trained how to use their phone to call in, we do that prior to. Or if there's a learning curve, sometimes we're calling people in. And it has to be structured because you can't have 25, 30 seniors, on a telephone call. So we start out with our phone etiquette. And we also use the meeting as a teaching opportunity as well, to teach people how to mute and unmute themselves. So finding your star on your phone, dial pad, and star 6 to mute. And that can be a teaching, a learning curve. However, we have a control panel. That's also, if anybody's struggling, and some people do, with it, I've gotcha. And an instructor leads the discussion, because there's a topic, and we try to keep everybody on topic, and everybody gets a chance to weigh in if they want, at least 2 or 3 times. There might be an icebreaker. There's also a resource that's given at every meeting. So, when we started, how we've had all those ebbs and flows with the pandemic, thinking, we were going to open back up and we'll go back to our meeting, and it didn't happen. We started hearing back from our clients, I love this program. I don't have to travel anywhere. In Sacramento, we would actually pick people up and bring them to in-person support group meetings. But for a lot of seniors, that was taxing, that was difficult, and that was once a month. So the other benefit was they had an opportunity twice a week if they wanted to connect with someone. And of course, with the isolation of the pandemic for many, many folks, this was a source of community, connectedness, and so we keep on going. And in Sacramento, we have broadened out our telephone platform to include specialty support groups. So we have a Spanish support group, it's all in Spanish. We have an Asian support group. We have a Black American support group. We started, and this is by demand, a group that does iPhone, is the iPhone for Me group, and a Braille group, because there are seniors that want to learn Braille. And recently we started, in progress, we're going to have our first book club, all on this teleconference platform. So
that sounds like fun. Wow.
Yeah, and we have 2 clients who are absolutely thrilled. I mean, what we try to do too in the senior program is we have a group called our Senior Mentors. And so these are people that have taken all of this to heart. They've been motivated, they've learned skills, they come to meetings, and if they want to volunteer as a senior mentor, there are public speaking opportunities and other opportunities to work, not so much right now, but in person with our other clients as a role model. And so these 2 ladies, we had been talking about a book club, and they just decided, this is our thing, this is what we want to do. And they've actually bonded through the telephone support group. They did not know each other before. And now that they're doing the support group together, they've bonded even more. So that's gratifying to me, because I get to see friendships develop, and people will think, well, telephone, but if you can't see well anyway, you are focused on your other senses. So people who have come for 2 years to this group meeting, they know each other by the sound of their voice, and they know a little bit about their history, and they are very welcoming to new people who come in, who want to be very inclusive. So just a little bit of background. When we do open back up, one of the cornerstones of our program was a monthly day retreat. It would be either 8 days or 5 days. 5 days for people with secondary disabilities, a little shorter time each day. But the idea was an immersion. We would pick people up. You'd have to live in the Sacramento region, or be staying there, having some kind of lodging, and we pick you up in the morning and take you home in the afternoon. But while you're at the agency, you're immersed into core skills. For somebody who's visually impaired, core skills would be activities of daily living, anything you can imagine. When you get up in the morning, how do you do your personal care? So labeling things so that you can find them. How do you put on your makeup, brush your teeth, so forth and so on. Kitchen, make a cup of coffee, fix yourself breakfast. Going into your office, if you have an office, or paperwork or bills to pay. All those daily activities. How does someone do that? And they can't depend on their vision. That's our specialty, our expertise. Communications would be anything from like a telephone, a device like this, which I'm going to show you in a minute, any kind of a device that you're using to get information from or to send information out. Adaptive technology or accessible technology, kind of same area in a way, because they cross over now, but that would be moving into using a computer, software, And there's different kinds of software for people who are low vision to people who are totally blind. Screen reading software allows them to use a keyboard. They don't even need the monitor, but they can do all the things that most, sighted people do. And then the iPhone, the smartphones are, they're amazing because all of you, I assume, know what they are and maybe carry them as well. Well, built into all of them are accessible features, meaning you can go into settings and turn on your screen reader, which is called VoiceOver on the iPhone or the iPad. And what that is allows you to communicate with the phone, to email, text, go on the internet through taps and swipes on the screen, so that it's a tactile communication with the phone. I don't know how Apple devised all this, but it is pretty amazing. So it's on every Apple product. Google has come along. They're trailing behind a little bit, but they're catching up. Not Google, Android phones.
They will never be the same as iPhones. I have an Android.
I find the iPhone more user-friendly, but there are lots of folks that are using Androids now and learning to use accessible features. And the really nice thing too on both phones are applications, the apps that you can, sometimes they're free, sometimes you purchase them. You can get apps that can scan and read mail or whatever document that you need. You can get apps that will actually have a person on the other end who, if you need to describe something to you or identify something to you, for you. There's GPS, there's all kinds of applications that are made possible now, and what that means ultimately is more independence, more ability to do things on your own. And then, of course, orientation, mobility training. As we get older, we all know that we're at a higher risk for falling. The more vision you lose, the higher that risk goes up. And I've discovered wearing progressive lenses, that puts you at risk too. So I'm much more cautious about how I move around. But for somebody with, serious vision loss, even though they go, well, I'm not blind, why would I need a long white cane to get around? And I always say, well, if you are coming up to the edge of the Grand Canyon, how long a cane might you like if you couldn't see the edge? And I'm going, give me, 50 feet. I don't know. What it does is it's a tool that allows you to know what you're coming up to. It's obviously not that long. They usually come up to the tip of someone's nose, but you need them to project long enough. They're made out of this very light metal that also sends vibrations through the hand, and through proper training, you can discern a lot more than you could with your vision, even if you do have some vision, before you put a step forward, a curb, a crack in the sidewalk, something that's not supposed to be there, you don't expect to be there. So lots of folks train with us for orientation and mobility. Some folks like to use the folding canes. And I tell people, even if you have a sighted guide, somebody that you take their arm, if you've got a cane, you're not totally helpless either, dependent on that person. And if you talk to folks who use sighted guides, sometimes people aren't always paying attention, They're going ahead, but their perspective is not necessarily where your feet are going to be. So there's a lot of applications to that. It's a difficult challenge for folks. The idea of having to use a long white cane can be, it's a symbol. It's out there. It does have its benefits, though. If you use it correctly, you can get a lot of support and help, and most often people are very kind and will move out of the way. But if you're having trouble getting around because of your vision, sometimes you're weaving, and look at that, that might turn people off even more. Let's see if I've covered everything right now. So the in-homes and the telephone support groups and clubs and different groups are primarily our outreach right now. We have every intention of opening back up once things are deemed safe to bring groups of people together at the agency. And because we do provide transportation for our clients, we also want to make sure it's safe to put them in a van together with others. And we're just not there yet, but we're optimistic and hopeful that we will be. And I will tell you, we've had in the past clients who've come from all of our 14 counties who have been able to find lodging, have family, to stay in Sacramento and have the opportunity to go to the retreat. It's pretty unique. All right, I think I've done a broad overview. Any questions at this point? Or time? Yes.
Do you cover Tuolumne County?
No, Tuolumne County is actually VIPS, Visually Impaired Persons Agency out of Modesto.
Okay.
I have not been in contact. We had collaborated several years ago with them to go down and help facilitate support groups. So at this point, the 2-year pandemic thing, I have not been in touch, so I don't know how active they are. But Tuolumne, Stanislaus are their counties. And they may have another one or two
Okay.
in the Central Valley.
I did notice that something's going on at the senior center. What are you guys doing? Are you doing a training at the senior center in Amador County soon?
Yes. Oh, thank you. On Friday, September 30th, I believe it is, and I'm trying to remember the time. It will be maybe 10 o'clock. I could get out my phone since I am being recorded here, and I'll look it up.
Okay.
But I'm going to be there to do a presentation and a training. I will have 1 or 2 mentors with me, and those are our senior clients who will be sharing their story and the impact of their vision loss and getting training for it and how they're doing now. I'll be demonstrating and passing around some tools, answering questions, and would look forward to having folks join us. And I will double check. Scroll down here. Oh, it's at 11:30. Amador Senior Center, 229 New York Ranch Road in Jackson.
Okay.
If you're interested, come find out who we are and what we might have to offer you or your clients.
Did you bring any of those little vision cards with you today?
I hope I did. You know, I did.
All right.
Okay, I quickly kind of threw a bunch of rack cards in here for the different programs. This is called an impaired vision simulator. And what's nice about this is it helps to inform those of us what it's like to view through the eyes of somebody who has like macular degeneration, I believe is the top one, diabetic retinopathy, glaucoma, retinitis pigmentosa, cataracts, and this one simulates blindness. So to use it, you just cover an eye or you close an eye and you put the little window up. And so if I'm looking directly at this lady here, I cannot see her face, but I can see her hair. So my central vision is impacted in macular degeneration. Diabetic retinopathy is a little more blotchy, you know, as far as places where you cannot see. So again, very disruptive. And then for glaucoma, your vision is going to be narrowing down. You're losing your peripheral vision. And recognize too, these are general. You know, they're not indicative. I've never met or rarely meet anybody who has macular degeneration who has exactly the same level of vision. But this is a really good teaching educational tool, and I'm putting all this up here, so you know, feel free to take some of these things. I've got some literature on the low vision clinic, vision rehabilitation. They also in the clinic have an occupational therapist who does home visits, and she focuses on helping people with their home lighting. She does some of the same things our instructors do. It's I would say it can be covered by insurance if you have the right insurance. I'll just show you this little device because this is a script talk. Anybody familiar with this? Heard of it? I'm going to turn it on. It's a prescription reader. I can hear it beeping, but what I like...
Script talk station ready.
Okay, ready to go. On our prescriptions, it's always tiny little print.
Oh, yeah.
If I don't have my glasses on, I can't read that print. So you can imagine if you are somebody with significant vision loss, that's pretty important stuff to know. As well as if you have several prescriptions, you want to know exactly what you're taking, the dosage, and then it has all the other information. Well, with the Script Talk device, pharmacists who will fill prescriptions for this device place a sticker on the bottom. It's a radio frequency waves. They have to have software, and it records everything that's on the label. So you place it on top, you press a button.
Patient John J. Smith. Medication amoxicillin 250 milligram capsule.
You get the idea. We don't have to hear that whole thing. This device is at no cost to people. Enhanced Vision is the company that makes it. The trick is finding a pharmacist who fills. In Sacramento, Rite Aid, Kaiser, I believe CVS does it through the home delivery, so I think that's where you have to buy 90 days worth or something like that of medications. I know Walgreens, Costco, some of the major pharmacies do fill. I don't know so much about some of the smaller pharmacies. However, I tell clients, take this in and have a discussion with your pharmacist about this program. And, you know, most pharmacies are probably high percentage of their business is with older people. And having a device like this, and there are probably, at this point, maybe more types of technology coming out to make prescriptions accessible for folks. But if vision loss is the hindrance in being able to manage your medications, this is a wonderful device. When I first started, we were putting what were called bump dots, which are little plastic dots with adhesive on them to label a lot of things. And we still use them, especially on appliances, to label and teach somebody a strategy. But rubber bands, you know, to help people have a tactile way of telling what is what. And to this day, oftentimes I buy shampoo and conditioner in the same bottle. But remember, my glasses aren't on when I'm in the shower. And so I put a rubber band around my shampoo all the time. And that's just my little way of telling myself, shampoo, you know. So it doesn't have to always be rocket science, which is the beauty of the program, is it's kind of thinking outside the box, coming up with strategies. And I've been doing this work for over 16 years, and I'm always amazed at how much, you know, I learn from people who have lost their vision, and some of the, you know, certainly with my phone, with other types of technology, but also just strategies that folks come up with. So that really can make a difference when an individual, their family, are isolated from other people who are dealing with the same problem. They don't get the advantage of sharing and learning what their options are. And I think that's one of the things that if we don't feel like we have choice, it can be very depressing to lose your vision. But when you start learning, you get challenged. You start thinking outside the box, and you discover a whole world of information out there and possibilities. And that's what I see happening to seniors. And I'm talking about folks in their 80s and 90s whose kid went out and bought them an iPhone. And so we go in and we're teaching them some basics, which may be just for them calling somebody in their contact list. All you have to do is hit the home button and say, call so-and-so, and Siri will help you do that. Or text so-and-so. And I know with my grandchildren, the only way to get a hold of them is through text, right. You know. Calling them, I'm always leaving voice messages. Texting them, I usually get a response back. So this connects people, and people have been more open to learning to use technology like this as opposed to computers.
No, I thought, and I'm probably wrong, I thought the talking prescriptions you could also read with a cell phone if you had the correct.
There is an app. You can get an app for it as well. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
And is it then the same kind of label, or is it a different label?
You know, I would suspect it's either this label or it may have that in DC. What is that called? You know, on
QR code?
yes, QR code. Yes, it may have a QR code on it.
But
Yeah.
it's the same company, basically?
I believe it's the same
interface,
company
or-
as Script Talk. Well, as Enhanced Vision, which actually started promoting this nationwide.
Okay.
So
I'm just curious.
to be
if the-
definitive, I would have to check on that to be sure, but I think it's still under Enhanced Vision. But I'll tell you, technology is constantly changing. Like there's a number of new phones that are coming out that are more similar to a smartphone but developed for seniors. We have a phone called Mini Vision 2 that we've been promoting for folks who don't want to go to an iPhone or an Android necessarily. And it has some adaptations for folks that make it possible to have, you know, the text really large on their phone, but very simplified. You're not going to necessarily have a lot of the same apps as you would on this type of phone. But that's what some seniors want. They want simplicity, but they want to be able to connect even if they can't see. I'm sure you're all familiar with CTAP, California telephones. That's still very popular among some folks. Those are going to be landlines predominantly. Occasionally, if they do get some type of cell phone in, but it seems like the last few years they've focused on landlines. And you can get the mobile phone, and those are free. You have to have your own service provider, though. So, and I know I used one for my mother, and it was fabulous, you know, because I could pre-record 8 numbers on it. She just had to press one particular button to call me, my sister, you know, whoever else she wanted to call. And that's basically what she used her phone for.
I think up here that most people depend on a landline because our cell coverage can be fairly dicey.
Yeah.
I know at my own house, I can get a call, but sometimes I can get a call, and then I can't move the phone. You know, can't move the phone or my head or anything because it'll drop, so
Yeah.
I think landlines are still quite,
Popular.
yeah.
And
Quite
hopefully
similar here.
service providers are getting that information out for folks for these big button phones. The other thing that I found really beneficial for my mom, she wasn't wearing hearing aids, but you know, as she got into her 90s, her hearing wasn't as good. So she could adjust the volume very easily at the bottom of the phone. So these phones are designed not only for visually impaired, but hearing impaired. And that was helpful. Especially if she didn't pick up the phone, then you started worrying. Oh, I didn't hear it ringing. So that's an excellent program. The Talking Book Library through the state library, officially Braille and Talking Book Library, super popular.
And what do you have to do to qualify for that?
Basically, you cannot read large text, or you cannot read conventional text. Let me put it another way. I tell people if you're low vision and you're still struggling trying to read with large text, but you're not reading the way you used to. I mean, it's a lot of energy. It's, you know, to focus, and you may not be able to do that for very long. You would still be eligible for the Talking Book program. The application needs to be signed off by someone who's authorized, so you could take it to your doctor. Our instructors are authorized. They can sign off on the application. And many times, you know, when I talk to somebody in a rural place and they say they're interested in the Talking Book Library, I will send them the application with the signature already on it. All they have to do is fill it out. if they don't have anyone to fill it out, we'll fill it out and send it in.
Oh, nice.
Okay?
Yeah.
And then once the library receives the application, they'll process it, call the individual back, just check on, because they put in their preferences as far as the type of literature they want and confirm mailing address and all that. If they want a player, they'll send the digital player that plays, the books come on discs, they're about that big, recorded digitally, and it's very user-friendly. So it's got like 3 buttons, I think, on the top, big, large buttons. And so they give them the player, then the books come through the mail, and when they're done, they come in a little plastic packet, they put them back in, send it back. So it's, round robin through the mail. They're usually assigned a customer representative service person, and so you can even get to know that person and call in and say, what it is you're looking for, what you'd like to read. Otherwise, you can get it on automatic, and they'll just send you, like if you like romance novels, mysteries, westerns, whatever. Very popular, a lot because of these devices, is another aspect of the Talking Book Library, which is you can download books onto these devices. That program is called BARD. It's an acronym, I can't remember what it stands for, but BARD is what everybody calls it. That is, again, a free service, and if you have an iPhone, an iPad, and there's some other types of devices, you can carry your books with you.
And is that also through the Talking Library?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Funded by the Library of Congress. It's in every state. Here in California, the library, it's actually the California State Library that administers the program in Sacramento. Southern California, I know Braille Institute administers the program. It's in every state, because oftentimes I get calls from people out of state. They Google us and we come up, and they might be Arkansas. And so I will direct them to the library there that offers this program. It's a fantastic program. At our agency, we have another program for accessible reading. It's called Access News. We have volunteers who read newspapers and magazines. They're recorded, and then our folks call in, they dial in to get access to the types of literature they want to read. And then we try to also, in our rural areas, we have a lot of rural newspapers and newsletters and that kind of thing, as long as there's a volunteer willing to read, and most of our volunteers read from home, okay? So they're, again, using the internet to send through, I think it's MP3, their recording into our agency, and then it's put on a server and accessible to individuals. And it's updated every day, particularly for things like SACB and magazines. And there is another very popular telephone reader program. It's called Newsline. It's based out of Baltimore, Maryland. And they have nationwide newspapers and magazines. We try not to duplicate what they have read on their site. Their site is going to be computer reading. Our site is going to be individuals. So a little bit difference in the tone of the voice. If you've ever listened to audiobooks, sometimes you connect with some voices more than you do others. So yeah, lots.
Okay, where was that?
Newsline.
Newsline, okay.
It's NFB Newsline. So if you want to Google it, you can Google it. If you want to get in touch with me, because I do a lot of resource management over the phone, a lot of case management, my direct line is 916-889-7516, and that'll take you directly to my desk. If I'm not there, leave a message, your name and phone number, and I get back to folks. Always glad to help refer folks, even if it's not to our agency for services.
You mentioned that your services are free. Are all the devices free to the people that need them, or do they have to pay for them?
It depends. In our senior program, We oftentimes, when I send out packets, and I don't have all the devices with me, but some of the popular ones that we don't charge for in the senior program would include, these are bump dots, and they come in packages, and this has got, I don't know, 20, 25 bump dots on it. They come in different colors and different sizes. So I always include a package of these. I will include, writing guides are very popular. So what they are is, I'm going to pop that out. What they are is a piece of plastic with cutout in it. This one's called a signature guide. This is probably one of the most popular ones that we have. People carry it in their wallet with their credit cards, and when you can't see to sign that receipt, you know, that's kind of an embarrassing moment. Well, where am I supposed to sign? You don't want people taking your hand and all that stuff. People don't like that. You hand this to someone, please place this where I need to sign, and then you come in, hold it with your non-writing hand. A lot of times, because it is contrast, people can see where the white is. That's my area, anywhere there. Or if they're totally blind, people will fill the line and then, you know, place their pen and write. It may not seem like a big deal, but for a lot of folks, it's independence. They're still kind of in control. Writing guides come for envelopes, sheets of paper for like writing greeting cards. You know, again, it's the plastic cutout. It just kind of keeps you from, you know, going all over the place. And so those are popular. I always include one of those in the packet.
What are the bump dots for?
Bump dots are used to label. Predominantly what I see being labeled with these would be like a washer dryer, you know, depending on how you use it, for on, off, or permanent press, or however. The instructor usually comes in and works with the individual, or, you know, if families were to buy this, you know, to help somebody figure out through their sense of touch how to operate the appliance. Microwaves, very popular. Ovens, stoves. If, you know, people have systems, all kinds of personal systems for, you know, 1, 2, 3 bump dots on something to differentiate. When you are visually impaired, organizing, having things back in the same place, being put back in the same, by you or whoever you're living with, makes a big difference for folks in being able to find things.
Okay.
So good question. Other things that I recently have been including in packets would be something like a 2020 pen, which is like a Sharpie, but it's a bold line, but it doesn't bleed through paper like Sharpies do. Bold line paper on 8.5 by 11 tabs, packets, and also there's narrower ones for making lists, and it's white paper with a big bold line. A lot of people like that. Talking watch keychain is something that we just give away for free too, and that would be, again, access to the time. If you can't see the face of a clock or your watch, a lot of people, that's another sign that, you know, they're not dependent on someone. Pretty basic.
And how does that work?
How does it work? Well, the talking watch is on a keychain, so you can hook it on whatever you want. It does have a digital face. Most of our clients are not going to use it. I can't even see it. So it just has a button.
Oh, okay.
You just press the button. But there are other types of watches and clocks. In my home, I have something called an atomic clock. And it has a bar. It's about the size of this. And it has a bar on top, and it has a digital face. I press it once, and it'll tell me the time. If I press it twice, it tells me the date. I actually keep that in my bathroom. And I don't know if you're like me, sometimes it's like, what day is it? And so while I'm getting ready in the morning, I can pump, you know. Again, and then there are talking watches. People do buy those, and you can get some with the date on them as well. There are some talking watches and clocks that have Braille interface on it. You know, so there's a lot of aids out there that people, again, are not always sure of. North State Assistive Technology is at our store, and you can always call the agency and get a hold of anybody, including me, which is 916-452-8271. And you can get a hold of the store, the low vision clinic, any of the training programs. The store right now is appointment only. Our agency is still not just open door to the public. We like to keep the numbers down, so to come into the agency, you have to have an appointment, whether it's to the clinic, to the store, or to see an instructor or work with instructors. Coffee Connect. I would prefer to be called before I just give out this number so that, you know, I have an idea of who your interest and can tell you a little bit more about the program, but it is Tuesdays and Thursdays at 10:30. And hopefully if you have a landline up here, you can, you know, I always tell you, give these things a try. It may or may not be for you. Digital voice recorders, another tool that we provide at no cost. If you're writing down something and you can't see very well to write, and this happens all the time when I'm talking to people on the phone, and they'll joke and say, well, I got your number, I don't know if I can read it, and I hope I can find it later. Digital voice recorder is a very simple device that you can record a message on it and play it back or erase it. So it's very user-friendly and basic, and a lot of folks use these for different things.
And that's also free?
This would be free through the senior program.
Okay.
The long white canes, we also provide short white support canes, which, you know, if you're somebody who uses a support cane and you're visually impaired, it's supposed to indicate to the public that not only do you need support physically, but you've got visual impairment. You might not see someone, or you might not recognize them. It's not that you're ignoring them, you just had no idea they were there.
So the items that aren't free, if somebody can't afford them, is there any kind of assistance for them to be able to get the devices that may help them? Or?
Unfortunately, there is limitations there. Talking watches, clocks, various different aids. Sometimes the senior program can help folks if it's, you know, under $100 type device. A lot of technology is very expensive. It's pretty phenomenal. CCTVs, closed circuit television, is a device that's been around forever, and they now come with different size flat screens where you can put reading material on a platform and it's projected up onto the screen, and the individual can enlarge the text. They can do a different contrast background. Those are really popular and really helpful for folks. We're fortunate that people donate them back to our agency when they can no longer use them, and then we loan them out. So those we take all over our service region. If we have something, it usually goes out because there's usually a wait list for those. To purchase one of those you're talking thousands. And there are other types of phenomenal eyewear. I'm trying to think of what all the other things are called. Pretty phenomenal technology that people can now, OrCam is a device that is on a pair of glasses. And what it does is it has recognition. So you can train it to recognize people, and then you have a earphone in your ear and it will tell you. It can read for you,
I need
and
one
it will
of
read
those.
back
One
to
of those
you.
right now.
I can remember everybody's name.
Yeah, so
Oh, perfect.
there are goggles that people use for reading. There are now portable CCTVs that particularly students take to and from school to read textbooks and that sort of thing. I could go on. It's all phenomenal. It's all expensive too. So one of the things I tell people is before you rush in and buy even a simple lighted magnifier, which could be $100 to hundreds of dollars, make sure it's right for you. Make sure you understand your eye condition if it's progressive. Know what you're getting into before you make a large, a high-priced purchase on something. And that's just due diligence, really, because there are wonderful things out there. The more high-tech, you need to work with your eye doctor and make sure it's appropriate for you. And the other thing is at North State Assistive Technology, you can make an appointment to come in and look at all these things and handle them in person. So I always tell people it's a great education just to plan a visit. You don't have to buy anything, but you can check it out. And with the appointments now, you get full attention when you walk in the store. And you could, and it's your time to sit at all these different stations and work with these devices.
That's amazing. Yeah.
It is, it is,
I have a question.
yes.
This is very expensive. It's free to clients. Most of it's free to clients. But there's a bottom line, real cost. Is there somebody I can talk to that explain how you get the money you get to do these incredible programs?
We have a department
Oh,
called
I bet
Resource
you have a-
Development.
I can imagine it's a big
And,
department.
you know, they do the grant writing and the funding for things. They work in conjunction with folks in our agency who recommend that we have different types of equipment. If a client or a student comes to us as a client with the Department of Rehab, one of the benefits there is that if it's they're assessed that they need these high-tech devices, Department of Rehab will step in and cover it. If you are a veteran and you are eligible for services, and we do have a lot of older folks who are eligible, you know, age-related eye conditions, the VA pays for a lot of high-tech. The VA has a program also over in the Bay Area that's a residential program. You have to be in fairly good health because it's several weeks. Those are the two entities where I know the high-tech stuff can be covered. There are some other programs. Computers for the Blind is a program based out of Texas that refurbishes computers and laptops and will put on expensive software, screen readers like JAWS and Zoom Text for low vision, and that is very affordable for folks.
I'm thinking of other disciplines. You're into blind. People here are into personal care at home for people who need it, which are primarily seniors. There are no funding sources outside. The VA is really good, and maybe one or two others. Basically, there's nothing. But you've got federal dollars and you've got state dollars in your budget. And I want to know, I want to talk to somebody about how they go through that.
I will give you the contact information.
That's all I need.
Yeah.
I know you can't know
That's
all of
not
that. You
mine.
know so much already.
No,
But you're
yeah,
the service
yeah,
person, but I want to know where the money comes from. Because it's all tax dollars one way or another. And there's a way to get them.
There are foundations,
And
but the main, the ADA
Yeah.
funding is federal funding that comes down to
Okay.
each state and is distributed. It is
Yep.
specifically under a category older individuals with blindness. Now, there may be other pockets of money that.
Oh,
you
there
can
will
find
be,
out.
I'm sure, because you've got a big budget. I can tell it costs money to do what you're doing. You're doing great, but it costs money.
Yes, and that's why I call us a full-service rehabilitation
Oh,
center for the visually
absolutely.
impaired.
Yeah.
Yes, I've come a long way. I used to be in a closet in a classroom. You know the classroom closets?
Yes.
That was my office. I had one side, there was a partition, and another case manager had the other side. So yeah, a lot of what has helped society to grow, honestly, is the support of our community. We've had some pretty phenomenal people on our board who've not only been fiscally generous, but they've also been very involved in pulling in their friends, their companies, well, and you know, just being a board member, coming to functions, learning, talking in their communities about what we lend to the community. Every year, we serve an average between, 5,000 to 6,000 people in our service area. Since I've been working in the senior program, we can barely keep up, the baby boomers. And there was a little bit of a lull in 2020, 2021, and it's picked back up. So as people age, vision loss is one of those things that's challenging. One of the things that we do try to do when we come out and do an in-home, oftentimes I get the referrals from a child or a spouse. I encourage them to be there because it's not like we can come every week. But if somebody who is a support person learns skills and strategies, they can coach our client. And some of these things need to be practiced to master and to become self-sufficient. We also, through our program, collaborate with a counseling program. And so we can refer people for a limited number of counseling and pay for it for at least 3 sessions. And then after that, it's between the individual and the agency to determine, and they do have a sliding scale. That has been really helpful for folks. We did, in the spring, start up a caregivers group because there was a lot of interest we had in the low vision clinic, people bring in their loved ones and so forth. Mm-hmm. The problem was people didn't always show up, and we had a therapist who was facilitating, so we kind of backed off of it because of the low turnout. But we're thinking about going back to what we did in the past. Was 2 times a year we would have a family support seminar where we would bring family and clients together at the agency on a Saturday. And then we divide them into their groups, and they go to separate rooms, and they talk about the things that are on their mind, the biggest challenges, in working with family members and barriers and things like that. Then we come back together and we would discuss the topics, not identifying anybody, but the things that had come up in each of the group in order to facilitate hopefully better communication and understanding of what it is to be a caregiver, what it is to be a client or a visually impaired loved one. And we may be doing that over our teleconference platform, simply because you can actually divide people into groups and have them individually, like in their own teleconference room, and then you can bring them back together again. So in other words, facilitating conversation without visual access, it works. We didn't know starting this whether it would work. And a lot of things that we've attempted at the agency, you think outside the box, you attempt it, you adjust it, you adapt to it. We found that's problem solving. That's kind of modeling what we teach people. How can I do things differently, be effective, be independent, build my confidence in my ability to do what I want to do with my life? Very important.
That is amazing.
Any other questions for folks? I brought literature, so if you want to take any of this literature, feel free. Like I said, I can be accessed at 916-889-7516. I can do an intake over the phone. It's very brief, and usually I talk to the person about what they're willing to do. If there's an in-home, I'll assign an instructor. If they want to try out support group, I'll assist them with that. I'll ask them if they would like a packet, and I'll explain the types of things that will come in the packet. And that regardless of whether the instructor comes out, someone will also call them to answer any questions once they get the packet. Do you have any questions about what's there? Have you changed your mind? Would you like an in-home? Would you like to visit? Your investment is your time to ask questions and possibly to learn even more so that you understand your options. So, you don't have to come to the agency. We don't have to come to you to serve you. But we can introduce you to a whole new world of resources and potential assistance.
All right. Well, thank you very much for coming today. I really appreciate it. I'm sure everybody else does too.